Hello, welcome to History Chats this afternoon. We're going to get started in a couple minutes here with the, concluding our Historic Preservation Month theme. And so thanks for joining us. We're gonna, if you're watching live, just hang out for a couple minutes. I'm gonna tell you about some stuff that's coming up. And if you are watching this after, and feel free to skip ahead, I guess, because you can do that. That's how time works. Cool, that seems to be working. Good. So, let me tell you about some stuff. So this, as I said, we're wrapping up our Historic Preservation Month here in May. Next month, starting next week, we're going to be going back to our old favorite, People You Should Know. So this is just a hodgepodge of different figures from the Marathon County area that have had an influence on the community and something that you should know about. Maybe you've heard of some of these people, maybe not. But there's an interesting story on all of them. So everything from the first mayor of Wausau, August Kickbush, to important figure, Mr. McMuller from Weston, to people that you maybe have seen their work, like Ted Mayer, the artist here, or, well, probably not Frank Schubert. He left town by the 1890s. So probably nobody around that remembers him, but good story there. So that's all coming up here. We'll tell you more about that as we get, into the month. Also, though, coming up earlier than we usually do. Usually we try to have our History Speaks at the end of the month, but this time it's kind of in the middle here, June 11th. We're going to be having kind of an interesting one here. This is a screening of a documentary about a local figure named Ted Gaydon. It's called Tuba Ted, the Man and the Music. This was produced back in, I think, 2019 or so by Clear Focus Media, local documentary sort of thing they put together. It's a cool, very cool story. It's very well done. We're gonna have a live screening here at the Historical Society. I think because of the way this works, we probably won't be live streaming it, but it'll be a fun program. Look forward to that. So that's what I have coming up here. Well, why don't we jump in here? I'm gonna vacate the seat for Gary. We're talking with Chris Martens here about some historic preservation stuff. So, here you go.
Thank you, Ben, and welcome this afternoon. Like Ben said, this is the concluding session with regard to historic preservation. Month of May, statewide as well as nationally, we celebrate May as Historic Preservation Month. So we thought we would highlight this week with Christine Martens, who is president of the Friends of Wausau Historic Landmarks, and also sits on the City of Wausau Historic Preservation Commission. So we thought we would inquire a little bit, talk a little bit about historic preservation as it's going on in the city, some of the things that have gone on in the past, and maybe we can talk a little bit about the future and what's going on with regard to the Friends and all. But first of all, Chris, just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into historic preservation.
All right. Well, I came to Wausau early 90s, 92, I think, and from southeast area of Wisconsin. And a few years in, I got involved with the Historical Society, along with my daughter, who was in the junior history club at the time. So I became more involved with area history through that and volunteering here at the Historical Society. And eventually was able to join in with the Friends of Wausau Historic Landmarks when that was revived, I guess you could call it, which gave me the chance to look into architecture of the area, not just the people and so forth. I guess how I got interested in it is, I don't know. It's just always been something I've been interested in, maybe hanging out with my mom and dad, who took me around to see museums and historic areas.
So so the two specific groups that we'll talk a little bit about this afternoon that you're heavily involved with, let's talk a little bit about the City of Wausau's Historic Preservation Commission.
Yes.
You've been on the commission for several years now.
Yeah.
What does the Historic Preservation Commission do
Okay, the Historic Preservation Commission is sort of, I guess you could call it the watchdog of historic buildings in the area. The Friends of Wausau Historic Landmarks brings attention to the architecture in the area and the importance of it. The Historic Preservation Commission also does that, but also has the ability to landmark buildings and other type things and create historic districts, etc., which gives them the ability to, if somebody wants to, let's say, knock down a historic building, if it's a landmark, it would need to come through the Historic Preservation Commission to be okayed, or even if they want to make changes to the outside of a historic building, there's sort of that safety net, I guess you could say, for a historic building, that it needs to come through. The commission looks at it and says, yes, this probably won't hurt it, or no, that's absolutely wrong for the historic building.
So just lately, the Historic Preservation Commission has, with regard to a district, the Highland Park District on the east side of the
Right.
city of Wausau, and that has been on the state of Wisconsin register,
Right.
and it's in the process now of being on the National Register of Historic
Correct.
Places. So
Correct.
can you speak a little bit about other, I mean, we have a couple other districts, the Andrew Warren Historic District.
Another new one is the one, the Eau Claire Boulevard District. Is that the correct name for it? Eau Claire,
Well, it's Eau Claire Heights,
Heights,
the
that's
Historic
right.
District.
Which is over on the southeast side, which I find really interesting because it has more of your mid-century, early 20s and on type of buildings, which I find totally fascinating. In contrast to the Andrew Warren, which is your big houses of the lumber barons and such, which is also awesome, but it gives you a different point of view. So historic districts are fun because they give you not just one building, but a whole neighborhood's worth of buildings to give you a perspective of that time period.
And the city of Wausau, you mentioned the Clare Heights District, which is, like you say, that mid-century. The Andrew Warren, which was perhaps an earlier
Right.
historical part, the East Hill Historic District. And then now, just lately, the Highland Park District, which is sort of a different district than to itself.
Right.
And then, of course, the Downtown Historic District, which highlights some of the
Commerce.
the commercial buildings that
Right.
we have downtown.
Which, and I think these historic districts speak to the importance of historic preservation really well. These are part of your community. It's not just, it gives your community character. Without these buildings, the character would be gone. I think almost everybody has a few buildings in their memory that just stick with them, through childhood or something. I love that building, or I remember that building because whatever, some detail of it. And that's what makes historic preservation important. Saving those pieces of communities that are so important to just, I guess the term is placemaking. It makes it the place. Each has a different character, a different feel. We need to keep different pieces of it.
And that sort of was what the saving, the landmarking of those districts, as well as separate individual landmarks,
Right.
is perhaps the role of the Historic Preservation Commission
Correct.
of the city of Wausau. But then we also have the Friends of Wausau Historic Landmarks, which takes on a different tact, a different
Right.
emphasis, which is sort of pointing those things out and highlighting
Right.
those and talking about them.
Right. It's more educational than the Historic Preservation Commission. I think they work well hand in hand. I think they're both very important pieces of the community. And so the Friends of Wausau Historic Landmarks, we We host our walks, our architectural ambles every year, which take you through 4 or 5 different areas. We try and highlight totally different things so that you get that mixed perspective. Some, hey, commercial buildings are cool, and mid-century houses are cool, and just appreciate the different architectural styles and what makes them a different architectural style. We try and throw in some of the history of the building. Because when a building becomes a landmark, this is sort of an aside, when a building becomes a landmark, it needs to have not just old. A house can be 100 years old and not be a landmark. It has to be, it has to have historic importance of some sort, have an important person involved with it or attached to it, be of an important architectural style, or at least a good example of an architectural style that hasn't been what we call remodeled to the point where you can't look at it and say, that's a Queen Anne. You can't tell. That would preclude it. So like I say, it's not just the old part. It's is it a good example? Is it historically important? Or is the architect of importance? Is it an architect people know and love?
Frank Lloyd Wright, for
Right.
instance.
Frank Lloyd Wright. I never say his name right. George Maher.
Right.
Is it a school of architecture that's important? So, but like I was saying, Friends of Wausau Historic Landmarks brings that information to people in a friendly way, in an active way, just to point out the importance of these
And
things.
we have some ambles this year, but the Friends have been doing this for several years,
Yes.
highlighting a variety of different, what I like to think of as highlighting different neighborhoods.
Correct.
It isn't just that specific. Each individual neighborhood has unique stories to tell, and I think what we've been doing in past years has been telling some of those individual
Right.
stories. And then can you tell us a little something about what we have in line for this year, the Friends?
Absolutely. Before I do, though, I just wanted to say when we do these architectural ambles with the stories you mentioned, what's fun about these is that as we're doing the tour, a lot of times somebody from the neighborhood will peek out their window and wondering what's going on, and then they'll join us. And then they'll tell the story of their house, something we didn't know, or just point out different details of it. So it's interactive that way, which is really fun. Like I found out in my neighborhood, there was a gentleman across the way that worked with Ringling Brothers as a kangaroo boxer. You just can't make that stuff up.
And those stories exist in houses and neighborhoods
Right.
throughout the city and really throughout Marathon County.
It's
really
amazing.
incredible.
So that's what we work with on the architectural ambles. Our first one is Tuesday, May 31st, so coming up, and that's with you, Gary. You will be looking at the southwest side factories, starting at Riverside Park and looking at a number of factories and a church and a school throughout that area.
So are there other noted features of that neighborhood that we want to highlight? It, like I said before, it's really neighborhoods. It's the core of a neighborhood, the core of the city that we try to highlight.
Correct. Oh, and each one is at 6:30 p.m. We should mention that, and they're always free. The next one is June 28th. It's always the last Tuesday of the month, you'll notice. So June 28th at 6:30 p.m., we will be looking at Highland Park, our newest district. So a good chance to look at that. And that will be with Patrick Bacher. And then on July 26th, we will be looking at a slightly different version of things. I will be taking that tour on, and we'll be having a theme of Wausau women. And that will be mainly through the downtown area, a little bit outside of downtown. August 30th, back in my neighborhood, we'll be looking at Marathon Battery. and the railroad tracks that run through that area. I find that whole area totally fascinating. Maybe because I walk through there a lot. And in September, again, something a little different. We'll be taking a grand tour of the Wisconsin River, down the river. So keep an eye out for that. That'll be a long one and will involve several of us taking on pieces of it.
And we'll be walking, we won't be going down the river, but
Oh,
we'll
yes.
be going along the river bank. And that.
Good point. That is the plan.
So you've been now with preservation for a while. Are there some noted success stories that you know that has gone on within the city that you specifically want to attach to?
Well, I'm of course always proud of or excited by whatever you want to say. Grant School. I had worked within Grant School a little bit through the Girl Scouts, and but I know it's an important piece of that neighborhood. I was excited to see that has remained with us rather than being razed. So that one is, of course, the biggest one.
And you led the effort through the commission, through the Historic Preservation Commission, to landmark it. So that it is a landmark within the city. That process, can you speak to that with regard to what it takes? Public hearing, plan commission. So it is not a rigorous effort, but it is an effort that the city of Wausau does have for buildings and districts in the city to be landmarked and to become a district. So
I was going to say it involves the Historic Preservation Commission brings it forth and says we think this building ought to be landmarked for these reasons and lay out the reasons. Grant School, it's because of the architectural style, the architect, the age, the importance of it in the community. It just goes on. So that's all put together. And the Historic Preservation Commission votes on it, says, yes, we think it should be. Goes to the Planning Commission, and they have to take a look at it and all the materials that are sent along, and they decide based on their, what they think is correct. And then finally it goes to the Common Council, and it goes through there. And they vote yes or no. And I forgot a step, which you mentioned, which is the public hearing, which begins, is sort of between, if I remember right, between the Historic Preservation Commission and the Planning Commission, where we invite the public to come in and speak their piece. Yes, we think this is a fabulous building. It needs to be saved. Or no, it's not really all that important. We think it'd be more important to move forward with plans to raise it or whatever. So there is that public comment in there. So the public is not left out of these decisions. They are a part of it.
So you talk a lot about architecture. What is, do you have a favorite building or house or style of house that, what is there something really that really attracts you into historic preservation? I know that.
It changes every time I take a walk. I've been walking through the southeast side lately, and just walking through, at first you're like, oh, that house is so cool. And then you come to the next one, and you're like, oh, that detail is really neat. So I'm very, I waffle a lot. Okay. I don't have a favorite building or style.
It just shows an appreciation for the variety of different architecture in this city. The architects that planned it, the variety of neighborhoods, because every neighborhood has a different style of architecture, something unique about it. And you're sort of carrying on then the historic preservation effort in this city. and we thank you for coming today and
Absolutely.
sharing your enthusiasm for historic preservation. Is there anything that you would want to conclude with, or we can?
Yes, I do have something to
You do.
conclude with.
Okay.
I do. A couple of things. First, if you'd like to become involved, because Friends of Wausau Historic Landmarks is a small but mighty group, and we'd appreciate any extra help to do our walks. And of course, our gingerbread contest every December. If you'd like to become involved, you can either contact Gary here at the museum or leave us a note on Facebook. If you want to contact me by email, it's probably best. Christine Martens 368@gmail.com, all one word. That's pretty easy. And other than that, I guess that was my piece to say. Thank you for having me. And thank you, Gary, for being my mentor all these years and getting involved.
Well, again, thank you, Christine. Thank you for coming this and sharing a little bit, sort of concluding a little bit about Historic Preservation Month. I thought we would, and thank you for being one of the key players in historic preservation in the city of Wausau. So,
Yes.
so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yay!
Wow, that
audience surrogate there. Yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. I'm just gonna. I don't think we had any.
I think I did stop.